Ma'am, I think your husband. The voice cracked on the other end of the line. Please, come now, before anyone sees. 3 days. Only 3 days had passed since I buried Robert under the great oak tree in the family cemetery. He still had his silver cross in his pocket. I could still feel the weight of the dirt they had thrown over his coffin. And now, Mr. Henderson, the foreman of our ranch in Montana, was calling me with a trembling voice I hadn't heard in 25 years. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 63 years old, and this is the story I kept for too long because there are secrets that weigh heavier when the dead can no longer answer. I drove 2 hours to the ranch. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The gravel road seemed longer than ever. The sagebrush lining the highway looked gray under the January sun. When I arrived, Mr. Henderson was waiting for me at the main gate, his cowboy hat in his hands. Mrs. Vance, forgive me. I didn't want to meddle where I don't belong, but I found something. He took me to the old tack room, the one Robert ordered boarded up more than 20 years ago. No one went in there. Not me, not my son Julian, no one. The wooden door creaked when Mr. Henderson pushed it, and then I saw it. The chest, that iron chest Robert always kept locked, the one he said contained ranch deeds and that must never, ever be opened. It was open. Inside were documents, all signed the week before his death, deeds, powers of attorney, letters, and on top, a sealed envelope with my name written in his handwriting. Asterisk. Open only in my absence. Asterisk. I felt the air leave my lungs because after 38 years of marriage, after raising our son together, after sharing the table, the bed, and the silences, I discovered that my husband had kept something so important that it could only be revealed when he was gone. I took the envelope with trembling hands, but before opening it, something else caught my attention. An old photograph taped to the inside of the chest's lid. A young woman, beautiful, in a white lace dress. It wasn't me. And on the back, in faded ink, a date. Asterisk, the 15th of August, 1976, asterisk. A year before Robert and I met. There are moments in life where time stops. That instant in the tack room was one of them. Mr. Henderson stood silently behind me, breathing slowly, as if he understood he was witnessing something he wasn't meant to see. But it was too late. The chest was open. Robert's secrets exposed under the dusty light filtering through the cracks in the roof. I put the photograph in the pocket of my black coat, the same coat I had worn to the funeral. It still smelled of church incense. Mr. Henderson, I said without turning to look at him, how did you find this? He cleared his throat. Well, you see, ma'am, yesterday, Attorney Miller came by Mr. Robert's lawyer. He said he had to review some ranch papers before the reading of the will. He asked me to open this tack room. I told him I didn't have a key, that Mr. Robert never gave it to me. Then he pulled a key from an envelope he was carrying and told me, Mr. Robert left this in my charge. Open it, please. I turned to look at him, and Attorney Miller saw what was inside. Mr. Henderson shook his head, nervous. No, ma'am. I opened the door and he just took a quick look, like he was searching for something. Then he said, this is no longer necessary. And he left. But I kept thinking, why did Mr. Robert close this room for so many years? What was in here? I sighed. So you came back? Yes, ma'am. Early this morning. And well, I saw the chest. It was there, open, as if someone had left it like that on purpose. Asterisk, on purpose. Asterisk, those words hit me. Robert was not a careless man. Everything he did had a reason. If that chest was open, it was because he wanted me to find it, but not immediately, not the day of his death, not during the funeral. 3 days later, enough time for the initial shock to pass, just enough time for me to think clearly, or so he thought. I closed my eyes and for a moment I went back to the years when Robert and I were young. We met in 1977 at the county fair in Bozeman. I was 23 and working at my Aunt Rose's quilt booth. He arrived one October afternoon, tall, rugged, with that clean-shaven look that was popular then, and a smile that lit up the whole tent. Do you sell wool blankets? He asked me. Yes, I replied shyly, but the best ones were bought this morning. Then I'll wait until more arrive, he said, and he sat on a folding chair near the counter and waited 3 hours until my aunt closed the booth and told him through laughter, "Son, no blankets are coming until next week." Robert smiled. "I know, but I wanted an excuse to stay." That night, he invited me for cheeseburgers and shakes at the diner. We talked until dawn. He told me he was an agronomist, that he had just inherited a ranch near the mountains, that he dreamed of modernizing American farming but without losing the traditions. "I want my children to grow up knowing where they come from," he told me, "to touch the dirt, to know the value of honest work." I fell in love that night, not with his words, but with the light in his eyes when he talked about the future. We got married 6 months later in the parish church in Bozeman. My dress was simple, white cotton with lace. Robert cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my life," he whispered as Father O'Malley blessed us. And I believed him. For years, I believed everything. We moved to the ranch, a beautiful property surrounded by mountains, with cornfields and a peach orchard that bore huge, sweet fruit every spring. The main house was timber and stone, with a large wraparound porch full of hanging flower baskets. There was a stone fountain in the garden, and in the afternoons, I would sit there knitting while listening to the birds sing. Robert worked from sunrise. He supervised the planting, fixed the fences, talked with the hands. He was a fair boss, respected, loved, and at night he came home tired but happy. We always had dinner together: pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie when there was a celebration. Afterward, we would sit on the porch to watch the stars, holding hands in silence. We didn't need words, or so I thought. 2 years after we married, Julian was born, a beautiful boy with big eyes and an easy laugh. Robert would carry him in his arms and walk him all over the ranch, teaching him the names of the trees, the cycle of the harvest, the sound of the wind before the rain. "This boy is going to be a good man," Robert would say with pride. "He's going to take care of this land when I'm gone." They were happy years, quiet, full of fresh coffee in the mornings, homemade biscuits, the laughter of Julian running between the furrows, orange sunsets. But now, standing in front of that open chest, with a photograph of an unknown woman in my pocket, I realized something terrible. Maybe that happiness was never complete. Maybe Robert was always keeping something, and I, too busy loving him, never stopped to ask. "Mrs. Vance?" Mr. Henderson's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Do you want me to leave? Or do you need help with anything?" I looked at him. He was an older man, almost 70, who had worked on the ranch since before I arrived. He knew Robert better than anyone. "Mr. Henderson," I asked slowly, "did you know Robert kept this chest here?" He lowered his gaze. "Yes, ma'am." My heart skipped a beat. "And he never told me anything?" "Mr. Robert asked me not to. He said, 'Henderson, this is something I must resolve alone. I don't want Eleanor to worry.' And well, I obeyed. I thought it was ranch business. Old papers, debts, maybe. And the photograph?" I insisted. "Did you see it?" Mr. Henderson swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. I never opened the chest. I swear on my mother's grave." I believed him because Mr. Henderson was one of those men who don't lie, the kind who keep secrets because they are asked to, but never out of malice. "It's all right," I said, calmer now. "You can go. And please, don't tell anyone what you saw here." "Not a word, ma'am. Not one." He left slowly, closing the door carefully, and I remained alone with the sealed envelope in one hand and 38 years of memories that suddenly I didn't know if they were real. Sometimes we trust too much in those we love. We believe we know everything, that there are no secrets. But life always has ways of showing us that we never fully know anyone. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved, someone you thought you knew who turned out to be a stranger? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it, because sometimes sharing the pain makes it lighter. I stayed alone in that tack room for almost an hour. I couldn't move. I couldn't think clearly. The sealed envelope remained in my hand, intact. I didn't have the courage to open it yet, because a part of me knew that as soon as I broke that seal, my life would change forever. There are truths that cannot be unknown. Once you know them, there is no going back. I sat on an old wooden bench that was pushed against the wall. Dust rose when I settled in. It smelled of old hay and stopped time. I took the photograph out of my coat pocket and observed it more carefully. The woman was young, 20-something perhaps. She had long dark hair, gathered in an elegant style with white flowers. The dress was fine lace, with long sleeves and a modest neckline. On her left hand shone a ring, an engagement ring. She looked happy, radiant, like a woman looks on the most important day of her life. I turned the photograph over. The date was written in blue ink in perfect handwriting. Asterisk, the 15th of August 1976. Asterisk. And underneath, barely visible, almost erased by time, was something else. An initial, asterisk, M asterisk. Just that. A letter. A mystery. I took a deep breath and finally dared to open the envelope. My hands shook so much, I almost tore the paper. Inside were several carefully folded sheets. Robert's handwriting, that slanted, firm script I knew so well. The letter was dated a week before his death. I began to read. Asterisk, Eleanor. If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. It means time ran out before I could tell you the truth in person. Forgive me. For 38 years I was your husband, Julian's father, the man who promised to love and protect you until the last of my days. And I did, Eleanor. I loved you with everything I had, but I was never completely honest with you. There is something I kept from before I met you, something I couldn't tell you without destroying everything we built together. Asterisk, asterisk. In 1976, I was engaged to a woman named Madeline. We were going to get married on August 15th of that year. Everything was ready, the church, the guests, her dress, our future. But 2 weeks before the wedding, Madeline disappeared. There was no goodbye, no explanation, just a brief letter she left at my house telling me she couldn't marry me, that she had made a mistake, asking me to forgive her. I never heard from her again. Asterisk. Asterisk. It destroyed me, Eleanor. I spent months trying to understand what I had done wrong, why she left me, if there was another man, if it was my fault, and then I met you, and everything changed. With you, I believed in love again, in family, in the future. I thought Madeline had been just a mistake of the past, a closed chapter. But 6 months ago, I received a letter from her. Asterisk. Asterisk, she is sick, Eleanor. Very sick, and she sought me out. Why? Because there is something she never told me, something that changes everything. Asterisk. The first page ended there. My hands were trembling so much I almost dropped the paper. I felt like the air wasn't reaching my lungs. Robert was engaged before me. That in itself wasn't terrible. Many men have relationships before marrying. But what hurt me wasn't that. It was that he never told me. 38 years together, thousands of conversations, whole nights talking about our lives, our dreams, our fears, and never did he mention Madeline. Why? What was so terrible about that story that he had to hide it from me for almost 4 decades? I continued reading the second page. Asterisk, Eleanor. I know this must hurt you. I know you are wondering why I never told you. And the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid you would think I never truly loved you. Afraid you would see Madeline as a shadow between us. Afraid of ruining the only good thing that had happened to me in life. But now, after receiving her letter, I know I cannot leave this world without you knowing the truth. Asterisk. Asterisk, Madeline wrote to me from a hospital in Seattle. She told me she has terminal cancer, that the doctors gave her less than a year to live, and that before dying she needed to tell me something she kept during all these years. Eleanor, when Madeline left me in 1976, she was pregnant with me, and she never told me. Asterisk. The letter fell from my hands. No, this couldn't be happening. I felt the floor moving beneath me, the walls of the tack room closing in, the air becoming thick, unbreathable. Robert had a son before Julian and never knew. Or did he know? I picked up the letter with shaking hands and continued reading, although every word was like a knife in my chest. Asterisk, Madeline told me she fled because she was afraid. Her family was extremely conservative. Her father was a violent man. When he found out she was pregnant without being married, he threatened to throw her out of the house, to disinherit her. So she made a decision. She went to Seattle alone, had the baby there, and gave him up for adoption. A boy, Eleanor. I had a son, and I never knew about him. Asterisk. Asterisk, Madeline wrote to me, because before dying she wants to find him, wants to know what became of him, and asked for my help. I wanted to tell you every night during these 6 months. I was about to tell you, but I couldn't find the words. I didn't know how to explain to you that there was a part of my life I had hidden from you. Asterisk. So I made a decision. I hired a private investigator. I asked him to look for that boy, who must now be a man of almost 48 years, and he found him. Eleanor, he found him. But when I was going to tell you everything, the doctors told me my heart was failing, that I didn't have much time left, and I knew I wouldn't have the chance to explain this to you face to face. Asterisk. That is why I left this letter, because I need you to know the truth, and because I need you to make a decision for me. That man's name is in the documents you will find in the chest. His address, his history, everything the investigator could gather. Eleanor, I know this is a lot. I know you might hate me for hiding this from you, and I understand. But I ask you, for everything we lived together, for everything we loved each other, that you find him. That you tell him who his father was. That you give him what I could never give him, the truth. Asterisk. Yours always, Robert. Asterisk. I dropped the letter to the floor, and for the first time since I buried my husband, I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried at the funeral. Like I didn't cry when they closed the casket. Like I didn't cry when they lowered his body into the earth. I cried because the man I thought I knew for 38 years had just turned into a stranger. I cried because the life I thought we had built together was founded on a silence. And I cried because suddenly I realized something worse. If Robert had a son before Julian, that meant Julian had a brother he never knew, a brother who perhaps doesn't even know Robert existed. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my coat and took a deep breath. I looked at the open chest. Inside, besides the letter, was a manila folder with the name written on the cover, Asterisk Private Investigation, Case R, Vance Asterisk. I took it out, opened it, and there on the first page was the photograph of a man of about 47 years, dark hair with some gray, deep eyes, a shy smile. He looked like Robert. My God, he looked so much like Robert it was impossible to deny it. Below the photo, his name. Asterisk, Eric Sullivan, asterisk. Place of residence, asterisk, Seattle, Washington, asterisk. Profession, asterisk, high school teacher, asterisk. Marital status, asterisk. Divorced, asterisk. Children, asterisk. None, asterisk. I closed my eyes, and in that moment I knew my life had just split in two, the life before opening the chest and the life after. Because now I had to decide something impossible. Do I tell Julian he has a brother? Do I look for this man, Eric, and tell him the truth? Or do I keep the secret, as Robert did for nearly 50 years, and let everything stay buried along with him? I left the tack room when it was getting dark. The sky had turned violet. The mountains around the ranch looked black against the horizon. Mr. Henderson had already left. The ranch was silent. I walked to my car, put the folder and the letter in my purse, and drove back to the house. During the whole drive, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. Robert asked me to give that man the truth. But at what cost? Because telling Eric his father died without knowing him was cruel. Telling Julian he had a secret brother could destroy the image he had of his father. And saying it to myself out loud meant accepting that the man I loved never trusted me completely. When I arrived home, it was already midnight. The living room was dark. Julian had come to stay with me during the funeral, but he had already returned to Chicago, where he lived with his wife and 2 daughters. I sat on the sofa with the folder in my hands, and there, in the silence of my empty house, I made a decision. I was going to look for Eric, not because Robert had asked me to, but because that man had a right to know. A right to know where he came from, who his father was, why his mother gave him up for adoption, even if that meant opening a wound that had been closed for almost 50 years. For the next 3 days, I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. The folder stayed on the dining room table, closed. Robert's letter folded inside my purse. Eric's photograph kept in the drawer of my nightstand under stockings I no longer used. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't read it again, because every time I did, I felt something inside me break a little more. I got up every morning trying to go on with my life. I made coffee, watered the plants on the porch, tied up the vines that had come loose in the wind, made the beds, washed the dishes, all those small things one does to pretend everything is fine. but inside I was destroyed, because every corner of that house reminded me of Robert. The armchair where he sat to read the newspaper on Sundays, the blue ceramic mug he used for his coffee, the closet where his plaid shirt still hung, smelling of his lavender cologne. And now, every one of those memories came accompanied by a question. When did he think of telling me the truth? Was he ever close to telling me, or did he always plan to take the secret to the grave? On the fourth day, Julian called me on the phone. "Mom, how are you?" His voice sounded worried, affectionate, as always. "Fine, sweetheart." I lied, just taking it slow. "You know, have you been eating well? Do you need me to come out? I can ask for a few days off work and—" "No, Julian, I'm fine, really. Don't worry about me." There was a silence. "Mom, I know this is hard. Losing Dad is something I never imagined would happen so soon, but you're alone, and that worries me." A knot formed in my throat. "I'm not alone, son. I have you, and your girls, and Fern." Fern was his wife, a good, hard-working woman who always treated me with kindness. "I know, Mom, but still. If you need to talk, if you need anything at all, call me. Anytime." "I will, my love. I promise." I hung up the phone and stared at the screen for several minutes. Julian, my son, the man Robert and I raised together. The one born in this house, who learned to walk on the porch, who cried the day we dropped him off at college. How was I going to tell him his father had another son? How was I going to explain that before he was born, there was someone else? I couldn't. I simply couldn't. So I decided to stay silent, at least for now. That night I opened the folder again. I couldn't help it. Eric's photograph watched me from the first page. Those dark eyes, that shy smile that looked so much like Robert's. I read his full information. Asterisk name, Eric Sullivan. Date of birth, the 3rd of May 1977. Place of birth, Seattle, Washington. Adopted 3 days after birth by the Sullivan family. Adoptive father, Frank Sullivan, deceased 2005. Adoptive mother, Grace Sullivan, deceased 2019. Education, Bachelor's in History from the University of Washington. Current profession, high school teacher at West Seattle High. Marital status, divorced since 2018. Children, none. Current address, 456 Liberty Street, Seattle, Washington, asterisk. There were also a few more photographs, images the investigator must have taken without Eric knowing. In one, he was leaving a school with a backpack over his shoulder and a thermos in hand. He looked tired but smiling. In another, he was sitting in a cafe reading a book. He wore reading glasses, just like Robert. And in yet another, he was standing in front of a bookstore looking at the window displays with his hands in his pockets. He was a quiet man, solitary perhaps, but there was something in his face that made me feel a deep sadness. He looked incomplete, as if he were missing something, as if all his life he had been looking for something he never found. I closed the folder and took a deep breath. And then, without thinking too much, I grabbed my cell phone and dialed the number that was in the report. Eric's number rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when I heard his voice. "Hello?" I froze. His voice was deep, calm, kind, like Robert's. "Hello?" he repeated. "Is anyone there?" I hung up. I couldn't do it. I couldn't simply call him and say, "Hi, I'm your father's widow, a father you never knew. Can we talk?" How do you say something like that to a stranger? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, sitting in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened, about everything that was yet to happen. And at some point in the early morning, I made another decision. If I was going to do this, if I was going to find Eric and tell him the truth, I couldn't do it alone. I needed help, but not from Julian. Not yet. I needed someone who could understand the situation without judging me, someone who knew Robert, someone trustworthy. And there was only one person who fit that description. My sister-in-law, Sophia, Robert's younger sister. Sophia lived in Aspen. She was 5 years younger than Robert, an independent woman, direct, who didn't mince words. When Robert and I got married, she was the only one in his family who welcomed me with open arms. The rest, well, let's just say they weren't very happy that Robert married a woman without a prominent name like me. But Sophia was always different. If my brother chose you, she told me on my wedding day, it's because he saw something in you that no one else has. And I trust him. We became friends, close, accomplices. But after Robert died, Sophia couldn't come to the funeral. She was out of the country, visiting her daughter in Europe. She called me devastated, begging forgiveness for not being there. I promise as soon as I get back, I'm coming to see you, she told me. I won't leave you alone, Eleanor. And she kept her word. 3 days after I opened the chest, Sophia knocked on my door. I saw her through the peephole and felt enormous relief. I opened the door, and before I could say anything, she hugged me. Eleanor, my Eleanor. I cried in her arms like I hadn't cried since I read Robert's letter. We stayed like that, standing in the doorway, hugging, crying together. When we finally separated, Sophia looked me in the eyes. "You're very thin," she said, worried. "Have you been eating well?" "More or less." "That means no. Come on, let's make coffee and you're going to tell me everything." We went into the kitchen. Sophia put water on to boil and took the coffee out of the cupboard as if it were her own house. She had always been like that, practical, efficient. No beating around the bush. We sat at the kitchen table, and I didn't know where to start. "Sophia," I said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you, something I discovered a few days ago." She looked at me with that direct gaze she had, that gaze that allowed no lies. "Something about Robert?" I nodded. "Something bad?" I nodded again. Sophia sighed and took my hand. "Tell me." I told her everything. From Mr. Henderson's call to the open chest, from Madeline's photograph to Robert's letter, from the secret pregnancy to Eric's existence. Everything. Sophia didn't say a single word while I spoke. She just listened with her eyes fixed on me, without letting go of my hand. When I finished, she remained silent for several minutes. Then, finally, she spoke. "That idiot." I looked at her, surprised. "What?" "That idiot brother of mine," she repeated, her voice trembling with rage. "How could he do this to you? How could he keep something like this for so long?" "Sophia, no. Eleanor, don't defend him. I loved my brother. I loved him with all my heart. But this is unforgivable." She got up from the table and started pacing the kitchen with her hands on her head. "Robert was always like this," she said, more to herself than to me. "Always keeping things to himself. Always believing he could solve everything alone. Always thinking he was protecting others with his silence." She turned to look at me. "But he didn't protect you, Eleanor. He left you with this. He left you with a bomb in your hands, and now you are the one who has to decide what to do." She was right. And the worst part is that I already knew it. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me. Maybe at home, maybe at work, maybe in the car on the way somewhere. Write the name of your city in the comments. I want to know where you are accompanying me from in this story, because sometimes knowing we are not alone makes everything a little easier. Sophia sat down opposite me again. "Eleanor," she said seriously, "what are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to find Eric, tell him the truth, give him what Robert took from him knowing who his father was, and the other part," I lowered my gaze, "the other part is afraid. Afraid that Julian will hate me for hiding this. Afraid that Eric won't want to know anything. Afraid that all this will destroy the little I have left of Robert." Sophia sighed. "Eleanor, listen to me closely. Robert made a mistake, a huge mistake. But you don't have to carry that. You don't have to fix what he left broken. But he asked me to. He had no right to ask you. He had no right to leave this responsibility to you, no right to ask you to find that man, to tell him the truth, to fix his past." Those words hit me because she was right. Robert had no right. But what if I didn't do it? What if I let Eric go on living without knowing? Would that make me better than Robert? "I don't know what to do, Sophia," I whispered with tears in my eyes. "I really don't know." She hugged me. "It's okay not to know, Eleanor. It's okay to feel lost. But there is one thing I do know." "What?" "That whatever you decide, I am going to be with you. You are not going to go through this alone." And in that moment I realized something. Maybe Robert left me this burden, but I didn't have to carry it alone. I had Sophia. I had Julian. I had my own strength. And although I didn't know what I was going to do, I knew that eventually I would make a decision and live with the consequences, as I always had. Sophia stayed with me that night. She made vegetable soup, forced me to eat even though I wasn't hungry, and afterward, we sat in the living room to watch an old black and white movie that neither of us was really watching. We just needed company, shared silence, someone to understand that sometimes words are unnecessary. Before going to sleep, Sophia took my hands. "Eleanor, promise me something." "What?" "That you won't make any major decisions this week. Give your heart time, breathe, think, and when you're ready, I'll be there." I nodded. "I promise." But that night, when Sophia was already asleep in the guest room, I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, because although I had promised her I wouldn't make hasty decisions, there was something I couldn't stop doing. I needed to know more about Madeline, more about what happened in 1976, more about that son she gave up for adoption who is now a high school teacher in Seattle. I needed to understand. The next morning, while Sophia was making coffee, I told her I needed to go somewhere. "Where?" she asked, without turning to look at me. "To Seattle." Sophia put down the cup she was washing and turned slowly. "Eleanor, you just promised me you wouldn't do anything hasty." "And I'm not," I replied calmly. "I'm not going to look for Eric yet. No, I just need to see. I need to know what he looks like, where he lives, what his life is like. That's called spying." "It's called protecting myself," I corrected. "Because if I'm going to make the decision to approach him, I need to know who I'm dealing with. I can't just show up in his life knowing nothing." Sophia looked at me for a long while, then sighed. "All right, but you're not going alone." "Sophia." "No, Eleanor, you're not going alone. If you're going to do this, I'm going with you, and I won't take no for an answer." I looked at her and saw in her eyes the same determination Robert used to have. "All right," I conceded. "We go together." 3 days later, Sophia and I were on a flight to Seattle. We decided not to tell anyone where we were going or why. The flight took a few hours. Sophia tried to distract me with conversation. She told me about her grandkids, her plans to remodel her house, but I barely listened because every mile that brought us closer to Seattle brought me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to face. We arrived at noon. We checked into a small hotel downtown. Nothing fancy, just a discreet place to spend the night. After dropping our bags, Sophia took out the folder I had brought. "Okay," she said, reading the address. 456 Liberty Street. "What do you want to do? Go directly?" "No," I replied. "First I want to see the school where he works. I want to see him from afar." Sophia nodded. "All right. Let's go." We took a cab to West Seattle High School. It was a large brick building. There were kids leaving classrooms, running through the halls, laughing, shouting the normal bustle of a school. We stood on the other side of the street, under the shade of a large maple tree. "What time did you say he gets out?" Sophia asked. "The report says he usually leaves at 2 p.m. It was 1:40. We waited. 20 minutes later, the main door opened and the teachers began to come out. My heart was beating so fast I felt it was going to burst out of my chest. And then I saw him. Eric came out walking slowly with a backpack over his shoulder and a thermos in his hand. He wore a light blue plaid shirt, jeans, and comfortable shoes. He wore glasses, his hair a bit messy from the wind. He looked tired, but also calm. He stopped on the sidewalk, took his cell phone out of his pocket, and checked something. Then he put the phone away, adjusted his backpack, and started walking. "It's him," I whispered, almost voiceless. Sophia took my arm. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't okay. Because seeing that man was like seeing a ghost of Robert. He walked like him. He had his same posture, the same way of tilting his head when he thought, my God, he was his son. There was no doubt. We followed him from a distance. I don't know if it was right, I don't know if it was ethical, but I needed to know more. Eric walked about 4 blocks until he reached a small corner coffee shop. He went in, sat by the window, ordered something, took a book out of his backpack, and started reading. Sophia and I stayed outside on the other side of the street watching him. "What are we doing, Eleanor?" Sophia asked in a low voice. "What do we expect to find?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I just need to see him. I need to know what his life is like before breaking it. Because that was what was going to happen, right? If I approached him and told him the truth, his life would change forever, just as mine changed when I opened that chest. We stood there for almost an hour watching Eric read, watching him drink his coffee, watching how every now and then he looked out the window with that absent expression of someone thinking about something else. At one point, a young woman approached his table, smiled at him, said something. He looked up, smiled too, but shook his head. The woman left, and Eric went back to his book. "He's lonely," Sophia murmured. "You can tell." She was right. There was something Eric radiated solitude, not sadness, not bitterness, just solitude. As if all his life he had been used to being alone, as if he had never found his place in the world. When Eric left the coffee shop, we followed him again. He walked to a used bookstore. He went in. He spent almost half an hour there reviewing books, leafing through them carefully, as if each one were a treasure. He bought some thin poetry books, then walked to a bakery and bought a bagel and a coffee to go. Finally, he arrived at his home. An apartment building, 3 stories high, painted beige. Nothing fancy, but clean, well kept. Eric went up the stairs to the second floor and entered one of the apartments. We stood on the other side of the street, looking at the window of his apartment. The curtains were open. We could see him move inside, put down his backpack, put water on to boil, sit on a small sofa with one of the books he had just bought. "Eleanor," said Sophia softly, "we've seen enough. Let's go." But I couldn't move because I was watching the life of a man I didn't know, a man who was Robert's son, a man who could have been part of my family. And I wondered how everything would have been if Robert had known from the beginning, if Madeline had told him the truth, if Eric had grown up with us. Julian and he would have been close brothers. Eric would have had a different life, a happier one. That night, back at the hotel, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, sitting in bed, watching the city lights through the window. Sophia was asleep in the bed next to mine, breathing deeply, and I could only think of Eric, of his lonely life, his simple routine, that absent expression he had when he looked out the coffee shop window. He knew he was adopted. The investigator's report didn't say it, but surely. Did he ever wonder about his biological parents? Did he ever feel he was missing something? The next morning, we made another decision. Before returning to Montana, Sophia suggested something. "Eleanor, what if we look for Madeline?" I looked at her, surprised. "Madeline?" "Yes, Robert said she was sick, that she was in a hospital here in Seattle. Maybe she can give us more answers." I thought about it. And although part of me didn't want to face her, another part knew Sophia was right. I needed to hear Madeline's version. I needed to know why she fled, why she never told Robert the truth, why she gave her son up for adoption. Because only then could I completely understand what had happened. I called the private investigator Robert had hired. I explained who I was and asked for information about Madeline. "Mrs. Vance," he said with a serious voice, "I understand this is difficult for you, but I must warn you of something. Miss Madeline is very grave. When Mr. Robert hired me, she was in treatment, but according to my latest report, 2 weeks ago she entered palliative care." My heart sank. What does that mean? It means the doctors can't do anything more for her. She has weeks, maybe days. I closed my eyes. Madeline was dying, and if I didn't look for her now, I would never have the chance to speak with her. "What hospital is she in?" I asked. "Seattle Grace Hospital, Oncology Ward. Room 312. I wrote down the information. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance. One last thing. She knows Mr. Robert passed away. I informed her a week ago when you contacted me. I don't know how she reacted because I couldn't see her personally, but the hospital staff told me she hasn't received visitors since then." I swallowed hard. "I understand. Thank you." I hung up. Sophia looked at me. "What did he tell you?" "That Madeline is in palliative care. She has days left. And that she already knows Robert died." Sophia exhaled deeply. "Do you want to go see her?" I nodded. "Yes. But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of what I'm going to feel when I see her." Sophia approached and hugged me. "Eleanor, listen to me. You are the strongest woman I know. And whatever you feel when you see her, it's okay. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to be brave. Just be you." I took a deep breath. "Okay. Let's go." An hour later, we were standing in front of the hospital, a huge building, white, with windows reflecting the afternoon sun. We went in, went up to the third floor, walked down the corridors of the oncology ward where the smell of disinfectant mixed with something heavier, something I couldn't describe but recognized immediately. The smell of imminent death. We reached room 312. The door was ajar. I froze. Sophia took my hand. "Are you ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway and pushed the door. The room was small, simple, a bed, a chair, a window with white curtains letting in the sunset light. And in the bed was her, Madeline. The woman in the photograph no longer existed. In her place was someone unrecognizable, thin, pale, with sparse white hair, sunken eyes, hands like dry branches on the sheets. But when she saw me enter, her eyes opened, and in them I saw something I didn't expect. Recognition. "You," she whispered with a weak, almost inaudible voice. "You are Eleanor." I stood paralyzed. "How?" "Robert showed me a photograph of you," she said with effort. "Months ago, when he came to see me." The world stopped. "Robert came to see you?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, before dying. He looked for me. He asked me about our son." I felt my legs shaking. Madeline closed her eyes, and I told him everything. I sat slowly in the chair next to the bed. My legs couldn't hold me anymore. Sophia stood behind me with a hand on my shoulder, silent, present. Madeline opened her eyes again. She looked at me with that empty gaze of someone who has already made peace with death. "I didn't think you would come," she said with a broken voice. "I thought you would hate me." "I don't know you well enough to hate you," I replied, surprising myself at how calm my voice sounded. "But I need to know the truth, the whole truth." She nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm going to give it to you, because I have no time left to keep secrets." She took a breath with difficulty. Every breath seemed to cost her enormous effort. "Do you want water?" I asked. "No. Just listen to me. Before it's too late." Madeline began to speak, and I could only listen. "I met Robert in 1975, she said. "I was 22. He was 25. A mutual friend introduced us at a party in Bozeman. Robert had just finished his degree. I was finishing mine. Teaching." She paused. "We fell in love fast. Too fast, maybe. But it was something beautiful, something real. Robert was different from all the men I had met. He was kind, respectful, a dreamer. I listened without interrupting. 6 months later, he asked me to marry him. I said yes without thinking. I was so happy, so excited. I thought I had finally found my place in the world. Her voice cracked. But then, I realized I was pregnant. She closed her eyes. It was June 1976, 2 months before the wedding. I took a test in secret, and when it came out positive, I was terrified. "Why?" I asked softly. "If you were going to get married anyway." "Because my father," she said with bitterness in her voice. "My father was a terrible man. Violent, controlling, and very, very religious. He was a prominent figure in our community in Georgia." She opened her eyes and looked at me. For him, getting pregnant before marriage was the worst sin a woman could commit. It didn't matter that I was already engaged. It didn't matter that the wedding was in 2 months. For him, it was a dishonor. She swallowed hard. And I knew how he would react. I knew he would throw me out of the house, disinherit me, tell everyone I was a loose woman. A tear escaped her. "But the worst is that I also knew what he would do to Robert." "My father hated Robert," Madeline continued. "He said he was a man without ambition, that the ranch in Montana was a ruin, that I deserved something better. He only accepted the engagement because my mother convinced him, but he was always looking for a reason to break it, and the pregnancy was that reason. So he would have destroyed Robert," I completed. "Exactly. If my father found out, he wouldn't just throw me out. He would use his contacts to ruin Robert. Make sure he could never get a loan, never sell his crops." She paused for a long time. "So I made a decision. A terrible decision. I wrote a letter to Robert," she said with a trembling voice. "I told him I couldn't marry him, that I had made a mistake, that I didn't love him enough." "But it was a lie," I whispered. "Yes, it was a lie. I loved him with all my being, but I thought it was the only way to protect him, to protect myself, To protect the baby. And what did you do? I left. That same night, I took a bus to Seattle. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just disappeared. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I stayed at a distant cousin's house. I told her I had broken up with my boyfriend and needed a place to stay. She didn't ask questions, let me stay, and I spent those months hiding, waiting. Eric was born on the 3rd of May, 1977, she continued. In a public hospital, I was alone during the whole birth. There was no one with me. Not my mother, not my friends, not Robert. Her voice broke completely. When I saw him for the first time, when I held him in my arms, I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. She wept, a silent, deep weeping. Because that baby looked so much like Robert. He had his eyes, his nose, his hands, and I knew I couldn't keep him. Why not? Asked Sophia from behind with a trembling voice. Because I had no way to support him, Madeline answered. I had no money, no job, no family to support me. And I knew that if I returned home with a baby, my father would make life impossible for me and for the child too. She closed her eyes. So, 3 days after he was born, I gave him up for adoption. The silence in that room was deafening. Madeline kept crying. I didn't know what to feel. Rage, compassion, sadness, all at the same time. And then I asked slowly, what happened after? After. I tried to rebuild my life. I got a job as a teacher in an elementary school. I married, divorced, remarried. I had another son, but I lost him during the pregnancy. She paused. And every day for 47 years, I thought about Eric. About where he would be. If he was okay. If he hated me for abandoning him. Did you ever try to look for him? Sophia asked. No, admitted Madeline, because I was afraid. Afraid he would reject me, afraid of opening that wound, afraid of facing what I had done. She turned to me. Until I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, and I knew my time was running out. That was when I looked for Robert, she said. I didn't know if he was still alive. I didn't know if he had married. I knew nothing, but I needed to find him. I needed to tell him the truth before dying. And how did you find him? Online. I searched his name and Times. Robert Vance, owner of the Vance Ranch in Montana. Times appeared. Married to Eleanor Vance, one son, Julian. She looked at me with something resembling guilt. When I saw your photograph, when I saw that Robert had built a beautiful life, I felt relieved, but also destroyed, because I realized he had been happy without me, and that I had wasted my life keeping a secret that no longer mattered. I wrote him a letter, she continued. I told him everything, the pregnancy, Eric, the adoption, and I asked for his forgiveness. I didn't expect him to answer, but he did. My heart was beating so fast I felt it was going to explode. What did he tell you? That he wanted to see you? That he needed to know more? She wiped her tears. He came here to Seattle 7 months ago. It was the first time I saw him in more than 40 years. And how? How was that meeting? Madeline smiled sadly. It was painful, but also healing. Robert was angry. He had every right to be. He told me I had taken something from him. He could never get back the right to know his son, to be his father. She paused. But he also forgave me. Tears ran down my face without me being able to stop them. He told me, Madeline, what happened happened. We can't change it. But we can do something now. We can find Eric. We can give him the truth. And then Robert hired an investigator. She said, it took 4 months to find him. And when he did, Robert came to see me again. He showed me the photographs. He told me everything about him. And what did you feel? I asked, although I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. I felt relief. Because Eric was okay. He had a life, a job. He wasn't rich, but he wasn't alone either. And he looked so much like Robert that there was no doubt he was our son. She closed her eyes. Robert told me he was going to approach him, that he was going to tell him the truth. But first he wanted to prepare everything. He wanted to make sure Eric was ready to listen. And then Robert died. I completed. Yes. The investigator told me a week ago, and I knew it was my punishment, that God was charging me for all the damage I had done, because now Eric will never know who his father was. I leaned forward. "Madeline," I said with a firm voice, "Eric knows he is adopted." She nodded. Yes, his adoptive parents told him when he was 15, but he never tried to find his biological parents. At least that was what the investigator found out. "Why not?" Madeline sighed. "Because his adoptive parents were good to him. They loved him, cared for him, and he was loyal to them. He never wanted to hurt them by looking for someone else." I closed my eyes. Eric hadn't sought the truth because he didn't want to hurt the people who raised him. Just like me, I didn't want to hurt Julian by telling him about this secret brother. We were the same, prisoners of our own sense of loyalty. "Eleanor," Madeline said with a weak voice, "I know I have no right to ask you anything. I know I hurt you, that I hurt Robert, that I hurt Eric, everyone." She paused. "But I'm going to ask you something anyway." "What?" "Find him. Tell him the truth. Tell him Robert wanted to know him. That I am sorry. That I never stopped thinking about him." She looked at me with those sunken eyes, full of pleading. "Give him what I never gave him. A family. A history. A place where he comes from." I couldn't answer because I didn't know if I could promise that. I didn't know if I had the strength. But before I could say anything, Madeline spoke again. "Eleanor, there is something else you need to know." My heart stopped. "What?" She took a deep breath, with difficulty. Robert left something for Eric, something that is in the chest." "I know. The documents, the photographs, the letter." "No," said Madeline, shaking her head. "There is something else. Something Robert didn't put in the letter he left you." "What is it?" Madeline closed her eyes. "An inheritance. Robert changed his will 2 weeks before dying. He left a part of the ranch in Eric's name." The world stopped. "What?" "Robert wanted Eric to have something, even though he never met him, even though he could never be his father. He wanted to leave him something that told him, asterisk, you were important. You were always important. Asterisk." I left that room stumbling. Sophia held me by the arm as we went down the hospital stairs. I couldn't think. I couldn't process. Robert had changed his will. He had left part of the ranch to a son he never knew, and that meant that when the will was read, Julian would find out everything. I still wonder if Robert did the right thing, if he should have told me the truth before dying, if he should have left me this responsibility. And you? What would you have done in my place? Would you have told Eric the truth, or would you have let everything stay buried? Let me know in the comments, because sometimes we need to hear what others would do to find our own way. That night, back at the hotel, Sophia and I didn't talk. We just sat on the bed, side by side, staring at the wall, processing, trying to understand. And finally, Sophia spoke. "Eleanor, you have to tell Julian before the will is read. I know. It's going to be hard. I know. But it's the right thing to do." I closed my eyes. I knew, because deep down I always knew. I always knew I couldn't keep this secret, that eventually I would have to face it, and that when I did, everything would change forever. The trip back to Montana was the longest of my life. Sophia tried to sleep, but I knew she couldn't either. I heard her moving in the seat next to me, sighing occasionally. I just looked out the window, the dark landscape, the lights of small towns passing by, the stars shining in the moonless sky, and I thought about how I was going to tell Julian that his father had another son. I thought about the exact words I would use. I thought about his face when he heard it. I thought about whether he would ever forgive me for hiding this, even if it was only for a few days. We arrived in Montana at 6 inches the morning. The sky was barely brightening, the streets empty. The cold January air hit me when we got out of the taxi. Sophia hugged me before taking her own car to Aspen. "Call me after talking to Julian," she told me. "No matter the time, just call me. I will. Eleanor, you are stronger than you think. Don't forget that." I nodded. Although I didn't feel strong, I felt broken. I arrived home when the sun was already rising. I left my suitcase in the entryway, poured myself a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and took out my phone. I dialed Julian's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Mom?" His voice sounded sleepy. "Are you okay?" It's 6:30 inches the morning. Julian. My voice cracked. I need you to come to the house today, as soon as possible. What happened? Are you sick? No, I'm not sick. But I need to talk to you. It's important. There was a silence. Is it something about Dad? I closed my eyes. Yes, I'm coming. Give me a few hours to catch the first flight out. Thank you, my love. Mom, you're scaring me. I know, forgive me, but I'll see you in a while. Yeah, I'm coming. He hung up. Those hours were eternal. I showered, put on clean clothes, made coffee, took out sweet rolls I had stored in the pantry all mechanically, like a robot, because if I thought too much about what I was going to do, I wouldn't be able to do it. Julian arrived at 10 a.m. He walked through the door with his carry-on, hair messy, shirt wrinkled. He looked tired, worried. Mom, he said, hugging me tight. What is going on? Sit down, son, please. We sat in the living room, on the same sofa where so many times we had sat as a family. Robert, Julian, and I. Julian looked at me with those big eyes full of worry, and I didn't know where to start. Julian, I said finally with a trembling voice. What I am going to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about your father. He tensed up. What did he do? He didn't do anything bad, I clarified quickly, at least not intentionally, but he kept a secret, a very big secret, and now I have to tell you. Mom, you're scaring me. Just tell me what it is. I took a deep breath. Your father, before knowing me, was engaged to another woman. Julian blinked. Okay? Lots of people have relationships before marrying. I don't understand why. That woman, I continued, got pregnant. By your father. The silence that followed was like thunder. Julian froze. His face went from confusion to shock in seconds. What? Your father had a son he never knew, because the mother fled without telling him anything and gave the baby up for adoption. Julian stood up from the sofa. No. This can't be true. Julian, are you telling me I have a brother? And Dad knew? He knew 6 months ago, when the mother of that child who is now a man of 47 years wrote him a letter telling him the truth. Julian began to pace from one side to the other with his hands on his head. No, this can't be happening. I told him everything. From Mr. Henderson's call to the open chest, from Robert's letter to my trip to Seattle, from my meeting with Madeline to the final revelation, the will. When I reached that part, Julian stopped dead. Dad left him part of the ranch? To a man he never met? And when were you going to tell me this? I'm telling you now. After you already knew. How long have you been keeping this, Mom? Days. Weeks. Days. Only days, Julian. I just found out too. But you knew and didn't say anything. His voice broke. Why, Mom? Why didn't you tell me immediately? I got up and walked toward him. Because I was afraid, Julian. Afraid of how you would react. Afraid you would hate your father. Afraid of losing you. Losing me? Julian looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I would never leave you, but I feel like everything I believed in was a lie. It wasn't a lie. Yes, it was. Dad lied to us. To you, to me, to everyone. For 38 years he lived with a secret he never told us. And now it turns out I have a brother who doesn't even know I exist. He dropped onto the sofa with his head in his hands. What is his name? Eric. Eric Sullivan. And where is he? In Seattle. He's a high school teacher. Julian looked up. Did you meet him? No. I only saw him from afar. And what is he like? I hesitated. He looks a lot like your father. Julian closed his eyes and cried. I had never seen him cry like that. Not when he fell off his bike and broke his arm at 8 years old. Not when his high school girlfriend left him. Not even at Robert's funeral. But now he cried like a child. I sat next to him and hugged him. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Mom, he said between sobs. But it hurts. It hurts to know Dad kept this, that he never trusted us enough to tell us. He wanted to protect us. No, he wanted to protect himself. Because if he had told us, he would have had to face his past, and he preferred to keep it. We stayed in silence for a long while. Julian wiped his tears, got up, walked to the window, and looked out. "When is the will read?" he asked finally. "In a week. Attorney Miller called me yesterday. He said it's urgent because Eric is in the will." "Yeah." Julian Sihil. Do you want to meet Eric?" The question took me by surprise. "I don't know, son. That is something you have to decide. But Dad wanted us to know him, right? That's why he left all this. That's why he changed the will." "Yes, I think so." Julian turned to me. "Then we have to do it. We have to find Eric and tell him the truth." "Julian, are you sure?" "No," he admitted. "I'm not sure of anything. But if I don't do it, I'm going to live the rest of my life wondering how it would have been. And I've had enough of secrets. Mom, I don't want to carry one more." I felt my chest fill with pride. My son, my beautiful son, braver than me, wiser than his father. "All right," I said. "Then we'll do it together." That night, Julian stayed to sleep at the house. We ate chicken noodle soup in silence. Neither of us had much appetite. Afterward, we sat in the living room, watching television, without really seeing it. At some point, Julian spoke. "Mom, do you think Dad loved us?" The question broke my heart. "Yes, son. With all his being, then why did he hide this from us?" "Because human beings are complicated. Because sometimes we do things that make no sense. Because we love and hurt at the same time. And because your father wasn't perfect, but he was ours." Julian nodded slowly. "I miss him." "I do too." 2 days later, Julian and I were on a plane to Seattle. We had decided to go, the two of us together, because this was something we had to do as a family, even though Eric didn't know it yet. We arrived in Seattle at noon, rented a car, and drove to West Seattle High School. It was Friday, a school day. We parked across the street and waited. At 2 p.m., like the report said, Eric came out of the building. Julian saw him for the first time and froze. "My God," he whispered. It's like seeing Dad." "I know. That is my brother." Julian watched Eric walk down the sidewalk with his backpack and thermos, and then, without saying anything, he opened the car door. "Julian, what are you doing?" "I'm going to talk to him." "Now." "Yes. Now. Because if I don't do it now, I'll lose my nerve." I got out of the car behind him. We walked quickly across the street. Eric was about 20 yards away. "Excuse me," Julian shouted. Eric stopped, turned, looked at us with curiosity. We approached, and when we were in front of him, Julian took a deep breath. "Eric Sullivan?" Eric blinked. "Yes?" Julian looked at me, I nodded, and he looked back at Eric. "My name is Julian Vance, and I think you are my brother." Eric's face changed from curiosity to confusion, from confusion to disbelief. "What? Your biological father," I continued with a trembling voice, "was named Robert Vance, and I was his wife, and this is his son, your brother." Eric looked at us as if we had lost our minds. I don't understand what you're talking about." "I know this is hard to believe," I said. "I know it sounds impossible. But can we talk somewhere more private? We have a lot to tell you." Eric stood in silence for several seconds. Then, finally, he nodded. "All right, let's go to the coffee shop on the corner." We sat at a table in the back, ordered coffee, and told him everything from the beginning. Eric didn't say a single word while we spoke. He just listened with eyes fixed on us, hands trembling around his coffee cup. When we finished, he remained silent for what seemed like an eternity. Then, finally, he spoke. I always knew I was adopted. My parents told me when I was 15, but I never wanted to look for my biological parents because I felt that it would be a betrayal to the people who raised me." He paused. "But now you are here telling me that my biological father died without knowing me, and that I have a brother, and that there is an inheritance?" He looked at us. "How am I supposed to feel?" Julian spoke before me. "I don't know how you should feel," he said with a soft voice, "but if it helps, I feel the same. Confused, angry, sad, all at the same time." Eric looked at him. You didn't know about me either?" "No. I found out 3 days ago." And I also got angry at my father, at my mom, at the world. And now? Julian smiled sadly. Now I just want to know you. And although we didn't grow up together, although we didn't share the same life, we have the same blood. And that has to mean something. Eric began to cry silently, hands over his face. Sorry, he said between sobs. It's just that. All my life I felt incomplete, as if I was missing something, and I never knew what it was. He wiped his tears, and now I know what it was. A family, a history, a place where I come from. Julian extended his hand across the table. Eric took it, and in that moment I knew everything was going to be okay. Maybe not now, maybe not soon, but eventually. We spent the rest of that afternoon in the coffee shop talking. Eric told us about his life. His adoptive parents, Frank and Grace, had been humble, hard-working people. Frank was a carpenter, Grace a seamstress. They didn't have much money, but they gave him all the love in the world. They sent me to college, Eric said with a sad smile. They worked double shifts for years so I could study. My dad, Frank, he died when I was 28. Heart attack. He was working on a construction site. And my mom, Grace, she left 5 years ago from cancer. He wiped his tears. I could never thank them enough. I could never pay back everything they did for me. Julian listened in silence. So did I. That's why I never looked for my biological parents, Eric continued, because I felt that would be betraying them, as if saying they weren't enough, and they were more than enough. But you still missed something, I said softly. Eric nodded. Yes. I always miss something. I didn't know what, but it was like a hole. Like a question without an answer. Julian talked to him about Robert. He told him what he was like, how he worked from dawn, how he loved the ranch, how he taught him to ride a horse when he was 6, how he sat him on his shoulders so he could touch the highest branches of the peach tree. He was a good man, said Julian. Not perfect, but good. And I know if he had known about you from the beginning, he would have looked for you. He would have raised you. He would have given you everything you deserved. Eric listened with shining eyes. Do you really believe that? Yes, I know it. They stood looking at each other. Two men who didn't know each other, but shared the same blood, the same eyes, the same shy smile. At nightfall, Eric invited us to his apartment. It was small, a studio with an integrated kitchen, a bathroom, and a small balcony overlooking the street. But it was clean, tidy, full of books. Forgive the mess, he said as he invited us in. I'm not used to having visitors. It's perfect, I told him. We sat on the small sofa. Eric made coffee, took out some cookies he had stored, and we kept talking for hours, as if all the lost time could be recovered in a single conversation. At some point, Eric asked, And the inheritance? What is exactly what Robert left me? Julian and I looked at each other. We don't know exactly, I admitted. The will is read in 5 days, but according to what Madeline told me, Robert left you a part of the ranch. Of the ranch? Eric remained silent. I don't want anything, he said finally. I didn't come here looking for money or land. I came because you gave me something money could never buy. A story. A family. Julian smiled. I know. But that doesn't change the fact that Dad wanted to leave you something, and I think we should respect his will. Eric lowered his gaze. I don't know if I can accept it. It doesn't seem fair. You grew up with him. You worked on the ranch. You earned that right. I am just a stranger. No, said Julian firmly. You are not a stranger. You are my brother. That night, Julian and I stayed at a hotel near Eric's apartment. Before sleeping, my son spoke to me. Mom, did I do the right thing? What do you mean? Coming here? Looking for Eric? Telling him the truth? I approached him and took his hand. Yes, son, you did the right thing, because the truth is always better than the lie, even if it hurts. Julian nodded. It's weird, he said. A week ago, I was an only child. And now I have an older brother. How does it feel? Scary. But also, good. Like a part of me I didn't know was broken, just healed. I smiled. Your father would be proud of you. Truly. Yeah. because I did what he didn't have the courage to do. I faced the truth and accepted it. The next morning, Eric took us to breakfast at a market near his house. We ate muffins and drank coffee. We walked through the streets of Seattle. Eric showed us the school where he worked, the bookstore where he bought his books, the park where he used to sit and read on weekends. It was as if we were building something new, a relationship, a family from scratch. But that afternoon, when we returned to the hotel, I received a call from Attorney Miller. "Mrs. Vance," he said with a serious voice, "I need to see you urgently. There is something about the will I must discuss with you before the official reading." A knot formed in my stomach. "What is it?" "I can't tell you over the phone, but it is important, very important. I am in Seattle." "You're in Seattle?" "Yes. I came to file some papers related to the case. Can you come to my temporary office downtown?" I looked at Julian, who watched me with concern. "All right. What time?" "You can come now. I'll be waiting." "Yes. I'm on my way." I asked Julian to stay with Eric. "I want you to spend time together," I told him. "Without me. Just you two." "Mom, are you sure?" "Yes. I'll be fine. I'm just going to listen to what the lawyer has to say. I'll be back in a couple of hours." I took a taxi to Attorney Miller's office. It was a modern building downtown. I went up to the 4th floor. The receptionist showed me in immediately. Attorney Miller was an older man, about 60, with thick glasses and a serious expression. "Mrs. Vance," he greeted me, indicating for me to sit. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "What is so urgent, attorney?" He opened a folder on his desk. "There is something about your husband's will that complicates things." "What thing?" "Your husband made 2 wills." I froze. "2?" "Yes. The first, dated 15 years ago, is the will everyone knew. In that document, the ranch is divided between you and your son Julian, 50% for each." "Yes, I know that." "But 2 weeks before dying, Robert made a second will. And in that will, things change." Attorney Miller took out some documents and put them in front of me. In the second will, Robert divides the ranch into 3 parts: 30% for you, 30% for Julian, and 40% for Eric Sullivan. I felt the floor move beneath me. 40%? Yes, the largest share. But why? The lawyer sighed. Because Robert left an explanatory letter. A letter only I was to read in case disputes arose. And in that letter, Robert explains that he feels he owes more to Eric, because Eric lost 47 years. Because Eric grew up without a father. Because Eric never had the chance to inherit anything. I was speechless. "Robert writes," continued the lawyer reading the letter, asterisk, "I know this may seem unfair to Julian, but Julian had a life full of love. He had a family. He had a father. Eric had none of that. And I need to compensate him in some way. Even if it's with land. Even if it's with money. I need him to know he was important. That he always was. Asterisk." Tears ran down my face. "Does Julian know this?" "No. No one knows. Only you. And now you have to decide." "Decide what?" "Whether you tell Julian before the reading of the will, or if you let him find out that day in front of everyone." I remained silent. "Mrs. Vance," said the lawyer softly, "Robert also left a special clause, a clause that says if you and Julian decide to renounce your shares, you can do so. And in that case, the entire ranch would pass to Eric." "Robert. Robert wanted us to renounce?" "No, he didn't want that. But he left that option, in case you felt it was the right thing." I left that office stumbling. I took a taxi back to the hotel. During the whole ride, I could only think of one thing. Robert had left me a decision, the hardest decision of my life. Do I tell Julian his father left him less than a brother he just met? Or do I keep silent and let him find out at the reading of the will? And more importantly, what was I going to do? Was I going to accept the will as it was? Or was I going to renounce my part so Eric would have everything? When I arrived at the hotel, Julian and Eric were in the lobby laughing. They looked happy, comfortable, like brothers who had known each other all their lives. They saw me enter, and their smiles faded. "Mom," Julian said, getting up, "are you okay? You're pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." "What did the lawyer tell you?" "Nothing important. Just details about the reading of the will." Julian looked at me with suspicion, but didn't insist. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, sitting in the hotel bed, looking at the city lights through the window, and I thought about Robert. About all the decisions he made, about all the secrets he kept, about all the burdens he left me, and I asked myself, how far does loyalty go? How far does love go? How far does sacrifice go? The next morning I made a decision. I asked Julian to go out to breakfast with Eric. I need to make some calls, I told him. I'll see you in a while. When they left, I called Sophia. Eleanor, she answered immediately. How are things? Complicated? I told her everything. The second will, Robert's letter, the decision I had to make. Sophia remained silent for a long while. Eleanor, she said finally, what do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to protect Julian, wants him to have what he deserves, but another part feels Robert was right. That Eric lost too much, and that he deserves something, and what does your heart say? I close my eyes. My heart says that neither of them should have to lose, that there should be a way for everyone to win. Then find it. And that was when I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to renounce my part of the ranch, but I wasn't going to fight for it either. I was going to do something different, something Robert never imagined, something that maybe could heal all this. That afternoon, I gathered Julian and Eric at the hotel. I need to talk to you, I told them, about the will. They sat in front of me with worried expressions. I told them everything. The second will, the 3 parts, the 40% for Eric. Julian remained silent. Eric turned pale. No, said Eric immediately. No, I can't accept that. It's not fair. It is what Robert wanted, I said. But it's not what I want, Eric insisted. Julian is his son, the one he raised, the one he loved. I am nobody. You are his son too, said Julian softly. But not in the same way. No, not in the same way. But you are anyway. Julian took a deep breath. Eric, he said, looking him in the eyes. If Dad wanted to leave you 40%, it's because he felt he owed it to you. And I'm going to respect that, Julian continued. Julian, no. Listen to me. I had everything. I had a father. I had a home. I had love. You didn't have any of that. And although now we are brothers, although now we are together, I can't give you back those 47 years. But I can give you this. Eric began to cry. I don't deserve this. Yes, you do. Because you are my brother. And because I spoke up. Because it is the right thing. Then, I said, I am also going to respect the will. But with one condition. Both looked at me. The ranch is not going to be divided. It is going to be kept together. The 3 of us will be owners. But we are going to work it together. As a family. Eric, if you want, you can move to Montana. You can teach there. Or you can stay in Seattle and come on weekends. It doesn't matter. But the ranch is going to be everyone's. And no one is ever going to sell it. Julian smiled. I like that idea. Eric looked at us with tears in his eyes. Really? You would accept me like that, as part of the family? You already are part of the family, I said. You always were. Only now we know. And in that moment something changed. Something deep. Something I can't explain with words, because I stopped carrying the weight of the decision. I stopped feeling I had to fix what Robert had broken, because I realized something. Robert didn't break anything. He just left something incomplete. And now we were going to complete it together. We returned to Montana 2 days later. The 3 of us. Julian, Eric, and I. On the plane, Eric sat by the window, watching the clouds with that thoughtful expression I was already beginning to recognize. Julian, beside him, showed him photographs of the ranch on his phone. This is the peach orchard, Julian said. Dad planted it the year I was born. He said every tree represented a year of my life. Eric observed the images with bright eyes. It's beautiful. It is. And now it's yours too. Eric turned to look at him. I still can't believe it. A week ago, I was a lonely teacher in Seattle, and now I have a brother, a family, a home. Julian smiled. I can't believe it either, but I'm glad, truly. I watched them from my seat across the aisle and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. The reading of the will was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Attorney Miller's office in Bozeman. During those days, I dedicated myself to preparing the house to receive Eric. I cleaned the guest room, changed the sheets, put fresh flowers on the dresser, opened the curtains to let the sunlight in. Eric had decided to stay with us for a week before returning to Seattle to arrange his affairs. I need to resign from my job, he told me, and pack my books, and say goodbye to some people. Are you sure you want to move? I asked him. You don't have to. We can find another way. I'm sure, he interrupted with a smile. All my life I felt out of place in Seattle, as if I was waiting for something, and now I know it was this. This family, this place. On Sunday, I took Julian and Eric to the ranch. It was the first time Eric stepped on his father's land. When the car entered the gravel road, surrounded by cornfields and green mountains, Eric was speechless. It's like a dream, he murmured. Mr. Henderson waited for us at the gate. When he saw Eric, he froze. Good Lord, he whispered. He's the spitting image of Mr. Robert. I introduced Eric. Mr. Henderson, this is Eric, Robert's son. Mr. Henderson took off his hat as if he were in front of someone important. It's an honor, young man, a true honor. Eric shook his hand shyly. Thank you, sir. We walked around the ranch for hours. I showed them everything. The main house, the porch with the flowers, the stone fountain, the peach orchard, the stables, the fields where Robert used to work from dawn. Eric absorbed it all with eyes full of wonder. Here was where my father lived, he said in a low voice, as if he were in a sacred place. Here was where he worked, where he dreamed. Julian took him to the oldest oak tree on the property. This was his favorite tree, he told him. He said it was over 100 years old, that it had seen 3 generations of the Vance family pass. Eric put his hand on the trunk and closed his eyes. I wish I had known him. Me too, said Julian. But somehow, I feel he is here watching us, and I think he is at peace. That night we had dinner at the ranch house. I made pot roast, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, and homemade biscuits, everything just as Robert had loved. We sat at the large dining table, the same table where Robert and I had eaten for 38 years. The same table where Julian had grown up. And now, for the first time, Eric was sitting there too. Mr. Henderson joined us. And Sophia, too, who had come from Aspen when I told her Eric would be here. It was a quiet dinner, warm, full of stories. Sophia told Eric anecdotes about Robert when he was young. He was stubborn as a mule, she said through laughter. Once he fought with my father because he wanted to plant peaches instead of just corn. My father said it was crazy, that peaches wouldn't do well on this land, but Robert insisted. And the next year we had the best peach orchard in the whole region. Eric listened, fascinated. And he was always like that? Always so determined? Always, said Sophia. When Robert wanted something, there was no stopping him. That's why, when he met your mom. She looked at me tenderly. I knew he was going to marry her. Even if my family didn't agree, even if everyone told him it was crazy, he loved her, and that was enough. After dinner, Julian suggested a walk. We went out to the porch. The night was clear. The stars shone with an intensity never seen in the city. We sat on the wicker chairs. The sound of the wind in the trees was relaxing. No one spoke for a while. We were just there, breathing the fresh mountain air, listening to the crickets, feeling the peace of that place. Until Eric broke the silence. Thank you. Julian and I looked at him. Why? Asked Julian. For receiving me, for not hating me, for giving me a place in this family, even though I don't deserve it. Yes, you deserve it, I said firmly. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't choose to be given up for adoption. You didn't choose to grow up without a father. None of that was your fault. And now you have the chance to recover some of what was taken from you. And we are happy to give it to you. Eric wiped his tears. I always wondered why my biological mother abandoned me, why she didn't want me, and for years, I thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't enough, that's why she left me. His voice broke. But now Now I know the truth. I know it wasn't because she didn't want me. It was because she was afraid, because she was alone, because she had no other choice. Do you forgive her? Asked Julian softly. Eric nodded. Yes, I forgive her, because she did the best she could with what she had, and because in the end, she gave me a life, a good life, with people who loved me. Tuesday came faster than I expected. At 10 inches the morning, the three of us were in Attorney Miller's office. It was an elegant place, dark wood paneling, shelves full of legal books, a huge desk. The lawyer received us seriously. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Also present was Mr. Davis, a notary public to validate the reading. We sat down. Attorney Miller opened an envelope. We are going to proceed with the reading of the will of Robert Vance. He began reading the formalities first, personal data, legal declarations. Then he reached the important part. Asterisk. In full possession of my mental faculties, I declare the following regarding the distribution of my assets. Asterisk. The lawyer paused and looked at us. Asterisk. The Vance Ranch, with all its lands, buildings, and belongings, is divided as follows. 30% for Eleanor Vance, my wife, 30% for Julian Vance, my son, and 40% for Eric Sullivan, my biological son. Asterisk. Eric closed his eyes. Julian took his hand. The lawyer continued. Asterisk. Furthermore, I leave the following provisions. The income generated by the ranch will be divided equally among the three, regardless of the percentage of ownership. This is so that no one has an economic advantage over the other. Asterisk. That. I didn't know that. I looked at the lawyer, surprised. He nodded slightly. Asterisk. I also decree that the ranch cannot be sold or divided for the next 20 years. It must remain as a unit, as a family heritage. And in case any of the heirs pass away, their share will pass to the other two, never to third parties. Asterisk. Julian smiled. Dad thought of everything. The lawyer kept reading. Asterisk. Likewise, I leave a fund of $50,000 for Eric Sullivan as compensation for the years I could not be present in his life. This money is intended for him to establish himself, continue his studies if he wishes, or invest as he sees fit. Asterisk. Eric opened his eyes, surprised. $50,000? Yes, confirmed the lawyer. But that is too much. It is what Robert wanted, I said, and we are going to respect it. The lawyer continued with other minor details, bank accounts, personal items, Robert's truck, and finally, he reached the last part. Asterisk. Lastly, I leave a personal letter addressed to my two sons, a letter only they should read. Asterisk. The lawyer took 2 envelopes out of the folder. One said, Times for Julian asterisk, the other Times for Eric asterisk. He handed them over. You can read them now or in private, as you prefer. Julian looked at Eric. Now. Eric nodded. Now. They opened the envelopes at the same time. They read in silence. I couldn't see what the letters said, but I could see their faces. Julian smiled with tears in his eyes. Eric cried openly. When they finished, they looked at each other and hugged. A long, strong hug, a hug of brothers. After the will reading, we left the office. The sun shone in the clear Montana sky. We walked in silence for several blocks until Eric spoke. Do you know what the letter Robert left me said? Julian and I looked at him. It said he was sorry. That he was sorry for not being there. That he was sorry for not knowing me. That he was sorry for letting 47 years pass without knowing I existed. He wiped his tears. But it also said that he was proud of me, that the investigator told him everything about my life, about how my adoptive parents raised me, about how I became a teacher, about how, despite not having much, I was happy, and that was the only thing that mattered. He paused, and at the end it said, Asterisk, Eric, I cannot give you back the years we lost, but I can give you something, a family, a brother, a place to belong. Use it well, live well, and be happy, because that is what I always wanted for you. Asterisk. Julian also shared what his letter said. Dad asked for my forgiveness, he said with a trembling voice. He told me he was sorry for hiding this from me, that he knew it was going to hurt, but that he needed me to know Eric. Because Eric was my brother. And why? Because brothers should be together. He turned to Eric. And he asked me to take care of you, to teach you everything he couldn't teach you, to make you feel part of the family, to be for you the brother you never had. Eric smiled through tears. And I promised him, continued Julian, that I was going to be your brother. Not just in name, but in truth. They hugged again. We walked to a nearby park. We sat on a bench under the shade of a maple tree. And there, in that moment of peace, I realized something. Robert had died, but he hadn't left. Because he was in Julian. In his way of speaking, in his laugh, in his kindness. He was in Eric. In his posture, in his eyes, in his shyness. He was in the ranch, in the trees he planted, in the land he worked. He was in us, in our family. And that was more powerful than any will. A week later, I received a call from the hospital in Seattle. Madeline had died, peaceful, at rest. The nurse told me that in her last days she had asked about Eric. Did they find him? She asked. Did they tell him the truth? And when the nurse told her yes, that Eric knew everything and was with his family, Madeline smiled. Then I can go, she whispered. I have nothing left pending. And she closed her eyes forever. I told Eric, he cried. I could never talk to her, he said. I could never tell her that I forgave her. She knew, I told him. Believe me, she knew. We organized a small memorial for Madeline, just the three of us. Sophia, Mr. Henderson. We buried her ashes in a nice spot in Seattle, overlooking the water, but Eric kept a small urn to bring to the ranch, because even though they were never together in life, in death at least they could be at peace. That night, back at the ranch, the three of us sat on the porch under the stars and talked about life, about how strange it was, about how things never go as planned, about how sometimes the worst tragedies bring the best blessings. I lost my father, said Julian, but I gained a brother. Me too, said Eric. And I gained a family. I looked at both of them. And I lost my husband, but I found the truth. And that made me free. Because that was what had happened, right? Robert kept secrets. Madeline fled her past. Eric grew up without knowing where he came from. Julian grew up without knowing he had a brother. And I lived 38 years without knowing the whole story. But now everything was on the table. There were no more secrets, no more lies, just truth. And that truth had liberated us all. 3 months later, Eric moved permanently to the ranch. He got a job as a history teacher at the high school in Bozeman. And on weekends, he and Julian worked together in the fields. They planted more peaches, repaired the barns, modernized the irrigation system, and little by little the ranch blossomed again. Not just in production, but in life. In laughter, in family. One day, while I was preparing lunch in the kitchen, I heard voices on the porch. Julian and Eric were arguing about something, but it wasn't a bitter argument, it was brotherly. I'm telling you peaches are pruned in March, said Julian. And I'm telling you February is better, replied Eric. I read a study. Studies don't know anything, experience is what counts. And you have more experience than an agronomist with a doctorate? I have more experience than you, brother. And they laughed. I watched them from the window and smiled, because there were two brothers who never should have met, but who now were inseparable. And I thought about Robert, about how in the end he had done something good, something that, although complicated and painful, had united this family. Because life, I realized, always finds a way to balance itself. Robert hid a secret for almost 50 years, and that secret pursued him until his death. He couldn't tell Eric the truth. He couldn't ask Madeline for forgiveness. He couldn't say goodbye. But he left us. He left us the truth. He left us the opportunity to heal what he couldn't heal. And that was justice. Not a justice of punishment, but a justice of redemption. A year after Robert's death, I returned to his grave. I brought fresh flowers, white lilies, his favorites. I knelt in front of the headstone and spoke. Robert, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if there is anything after this, but if you can, I want you to know something. Tears ran down my face. I forgave you. For keeping secrets. For not trusting me. for leaving me this burden. I forgave you for everything. I caressed the headstone with my hand. Because in the end I understood. I understood that you were human, that you made mistakes, that you were afraid. Just like everyone. I smiled through tears. But you also did something beautiful. You united two sons who never would have met. You created a family where there was only emptiness. And that is worth more than any secret. I stood up. Rest in peace, my love. Because here, everything is fine. And it was true. Everything was fine. Because although Robert had made mistakes, although he had hidden the truth, although he had hurt unintentionally, in the end, life had balanced everything. Eric found his family. Julian found a brother. Madeline found peace before dying. And I found the strength to forgive and move forward with the truth. With family, with life. 3 years have passed since I opened that chest in the tack room. 3 years since I discovered my husband had kept a secret for almost half a century. 3 years since my life split in two. And now, sitting on the porch of the ranch, with a cup of coffee in my hands and the afternoon sun painting the mountains orange, I can say something I never thought I would say. I am at peace. The ranch has changed a lot since then. Eric lives here permanently. He turned one of the rooms in the main house into his personal library. It is full of books, floor to ceiling, poetry, history, philosophy. Sometimes, at night, I hear him reading aloud, practicing for his classes. He married 6 months ago. A primary school teacher he met in town. A sweet woman, with an easy laugh, who looks at him as if he were the most valuable thing in the world. Her name is Patricia, and when I saw her for the first time, I knew she was the one. Because Eric shone when he was with her. In the same way Robert shone when he looked at me. Julian comes to the ranch every weekend. He brings Fern and his 2 daughters, Sophia and Valentina, 2 beautiful girls who run through the fields like he used to run when he was a boy. The girls adore Eric. "Uncle Eric!" they scream when they see him. "Tell us a story." And he sits with them under the old oak tree and tells them stories of Greek heroes, of brave princesses, of dragons who learn to be good. Sometimes Julian and Eric work together in the fields, planting, harvesting, fixing fences. And although they argue from time to time, they laugh more than they argue. Because that is what brothers do, right? They fight, but they also love. Mr. Henderson is still the foreman, although he is older now. He doesn't want to retire. "This land is my life, Miss Eleanor," he tells me every time I suggest he rest. "The day I stop working here, that day I die." And I don't insist anymore because I understand what he means. This land is more than a place. It is memory. It is family. It is home. Sophia comes to visit us once a month. She always brings food, pies, casseroles, whatever is in season. "So you don't forget to eat," she tells me, even though she knows I eat well. We sit on the patio by the fountain and talk for hours about life, children, grandchildren, and sometimes we talk about Robert. "Do you miss him?" she asked me once. "Every day," I replied. "But it doesn't hurt like before. Now it's more like a gentle nostalgia, like missing a summer from long ago." Sophia smiled. "He would be proud of you, of how you handled all this, of how you kept the family together." "It wasn't just me," I said. "It was Julian. It was Eric. It was you. It was all of us." 6 months ago, we received an unexpected visit. A woman of about 50 knocked on the door of the ranch. She was tall, brown-haired, with eyes full of nervousness. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" she asked. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Cecilia." I am Madeline's cousin." My heart skipped a beat. Madeline's cousin. Yes, she lived with me in Seattle when she was pregnant with Eric, and before dying she asked me to deliver something. But I didn't know where to find you until now. She took an envelope out of her purse. "This is for Eric." I called Eric. When he arrived and saw Cecilia, he froze. Did you know Madeline?" "Yes," said Cecilia with a sad smile. "I was the only person who was with her when you were born. I held her during the birth, and I held you when you were a baby." Eric brought a hand to his mouth. "Really?" "Yes. And I want you to know something. Madeline loved you with all her heart. Giving you up for adoption was the hardest decision of her life. She cried for weeks, but she knew it was best for you. She handed him the envelope. This is a letter she wrote for you 20 years ago. When she found out she had cancer the first time, she asked me to give it to you if I ever found you. And now I can keep my promise. Eric opened the envelope with trembling hands. He read the letter in silence and cried. When he finished, he shared it with us. Asterisk, my dear Eric, asterisk. Asterisk, I don't know if one day you will read this letter. I don't know if I will ever find you, but I need to write it anyway because there are things I must tell you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for giving you up for adoption. I'm sorry for not being strong enough to keep you. I'm sorry for taking away the chance to know your father. Asterisk. Asterisk, but I want you to know something. I didn't abandon you because I didn't want you. I abandoned you because I loved you too much. Because I knew I couldn't give you the life you deserved. I had no money, no family, nothing. And you deserved everything. So I gave you the only thing I could give you. A chance. A chance to have a family that loved you. A house to grow up in. A life better than the one I could have given you. Asterisk. Asterisk. And I pray every day that that decision was the right one. I pray that you are happy. I pray that you feel loved. I pray that someday you can forgive me. Because although I wasn't there, although I didn't see you grow, although I didn't know you, you were always my son. And I always loved you with all my heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Your mother, Madeline. Asterisk. Eric folded the letter carefully. He put it back in the envelope and hugged Cecilia. Thank you, he told her. Thank you for bringing me this. She loved you, Eric, Cecilia said through tears. Never doubt it. That night, Eric, Julian, and I sat on the porch under the stars, as we had done so many times. Do you know what is the strangest thing about all this? Eric said. What? Asked Julian. That I spent my whole life feeling abandoned, feeling as if I wasn't enough, as if my biological parents hadn't wanted me. He paused. But now I know it wasn't like that. Madeline loved me. Robert would have loved me if he had known about me, and although I didn't grow up with them, although I didn't have what I should have had, I had something else. What? I asked. I had two families, the family that raised me and the family that found me. He smiled. And that is more than most people have. Julian put a hand on Eric's shoulder. You know, Dad used to tell me something when I was a kid. He said, Julian, family isn't just the people you share blood with. It's the people you share life with. And he was right, I said. Because you are brothers. Not because Robert said so, not because a will established it, but because you chose to be. Eric nodded. And I choose this family, every day, forever. The following months were quiet. Good. The ranch produced the best peach harvest in years. Julian got a new contract with a natural juice company. Now we sell our produce all over the country. Eric wrote a book. A book about the history of this valley, about the legends of the region, about the families that have worked this land for generations. It is about to be published. And I began to write too. Not a book, just memories, for my granddaughters, so that one day, when they are older, they can read this story and understand where they come from. Because that is what I learned in these 3 years. That the truth always comes to light. No matter how long you hide it, no matter how many secrets you keep, sooner or later the truth finds a way to free itself. And when that happens, you have two options. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to build something better. Robert chose to keep the truth, and that decision had consequences. He never knew Eric. He could never ask Madeline for forgiveness. He could never explain to me why he hid all this. But he also left us something. He left us the opportunity to heal, to unite, to become a family. And that is priceless. A week ago, Eric looked for me in the kitchen. Eleanor, he told me. He doesn't call me ma'am anymore. Now just Eleanor. Yes, my love? I want to ask you something. Tell me. Patricia and I are expecting a baby. The world stopped. What? Eric smiled with tears in his eyes. We're going to have a child. Well, a daughter. We found out yesterday. He hugged me. And we want you to be the godmother. To be part of her life. To be her grandmother. I couldn't contain the tears. Really? Yes. Because you gave me something I never had. A mother. And I want my daughter to have the same. I want her to grow up knowing you. Loving you. Knowing you are part of her family. 2 days later, Julian also gave me news. Mom. Fern is pregnant again. I laughed. Another girl? No. This time a boy. He approached and hugged me, and we want to name him Robert, like Granddad. My heart filled with joy. Your father would have loved it. I know. And I want that boy to grow up here on the ranch. This land has to stay alive. It has to pass to the next generation, and the next, so we never forget where we come from. And now I am here sitting on the porch, watching Julian and Eric work together in the orchard, watching Patricia and Fern chatting on the patio, laughing, planning the arrival of the babies, watching the girls play with Mr. Henderson, who teaches them how to care for the plants. And I realized something. Robert didn't leave. He is still here, in his sons, in his grandchildren, in this land he loved so much, in this family he built. Sometimes at night, when everyone goes to sleep and the ranch falls silent, I sit by the fountain and talk to Robert as if he could hear me. Look what you did, I tell him. Look what you left. A family, a beautiful, complicated, imperfect family. I smile. And although you made mistakes, although you hid things, although it hurt me, in the end, it was all worth it. The water in the fountain falls softly. The vines move with the wind. The stars shine in the sky. Rest in peace, my love, I whisper, because here, everything is fine. And it is true. Everything is fine. Because I learned something I never imagined I would learn. That forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering without pain. It is looking at the past without bitterness. It is accepting that people are human, that they make mistakes, that they hurt unintentionally, but that they still deserve love. I learned that family. Family isn't perfect. It is complicated. It is painful. But it is also the only thing that really matters. Because at the end of the day, when everything falls apart, when secrets come to light, when the world goes dark, family is the only thing left. And if you are lucky enough to have one, you must care for it, protect it, love it, even if it hurts, even if it's difficult, even if it's not perfect. I learned that the truth hurts, but it also heals, because only when you face the truth, only when you stop hiding from it, can you be truly free. And I am free now, free from the weight of secrets, free from lies, free from pain, because I chose to forgive, I chose to love, I chose to move forward. If my story helps you, if these words touch your heart, if you feel identified with the pain, with the betrayal, with the forgiveness, I want you to know something. You are not alone. We all carry secrets. We have all been hurt. We have all had to choose between resentment and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the only path to peace. And that family is always worth it, even if it's complicated, even if it's imperfect, even if it breaks your heart. I am 66 years old now, my hair completely white, hands full of wrinkles, body more tired than before, but the heart is full of love, full of gratitude, full of peace, because although I lost Robert, I gained something else. I gained 2 sons instead of 1. I gained a bigger family. I gained the truth, and I gained the freedom that comes with it. This morning, while I was making coffee, Eric came into the kitchen. Good morning, Eleanor. Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well? Very well. I dreamed of Madeline. Yes? And what did you dream? I dreamed she was here at the ranch, walking through the orchard, and she was smiling, as if finally she had found peace. He wiped his tears, and when I woke up I realized that maybe she did find it, because we are okay, and that was all she wanted. That afternoon, we all gathered on the patio. Julian, Eric, Fern, Patricia, the girls, Sophia, Mr. Henderson. We celebrated Valentina's birthday. There was cake, music, laughter. The girls ran through the garden. The adults chatted under the shade of the oak tree. And I watched them all. My family. This beautiful, complicated, imperfect family. And I thought about Robert, about how, in the end, he had done something good. He had created life. He had created love. He had created family, and although he wasn't here to see it, his legacy. His legacy lived on in every laugh, in every hug, in every shared moment. When everyone went to sleep, I stayed alone on the patio, looking at the stars, listening to the sound of the water in the fountain, feeling the cool mountain breeze, and I whispered one last prayer. Thank you. Thank you for the pain that taught me to forgive. Thank you for the secrets that taught me to value the truth. Thank you for the loss that taught me to appreciate what I have. And thank you for this family. Because in the end, that is all that matters. Thank you for listening until the end. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for allowing me to share my story with you. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think, if it helped you see forgiveness in a different way, subscribe and ring the bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman, a life lesson. Share this story with someone you love, because sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. God bless you, and until next time.